Hello and welcome back to Talent Thrives Here. I'm your host, Lance Lafort, and my guest today is Garner Haines. Garner is a sci-fi fantasy fan and a writer, and he's written many things. He's produced some short films, and but one of the things of big notice, he also did some work on Doctor Who. And Garner, I'll turn it over to you if you could tell us a little bit about the Garner Who experience. The Doctor Who experience? How did it start? How did that come to be?
Well, my friend Aaron McEachen was working for a BC-based game company, and they received the rights to do a Doctor Who-based mobile game. Except, of course, that she knew not one thing about Doctor Who, and realizing its 60-year history now was a bit more than she could binge in a weekend. She called up the biggest Doctor Who nerd she knew, which was me.
Right.
And her first words, I believe, were, "Are you sitting down?" Because it's like this was dream come true. I've been following Doctor Who. Well, my first Doctor was John Pertwee, so that gives you a
Right.
sense of how long I've been with the show. So we worked on development, and then something came up. The BBC said that they wanted our game. They were doing a new transmedia project. Now, before this, they had done Time Lord Victorious, which was sort of 10th Doctor and other things, and it was on YouTube videos, books, comics, audio dramas, the works, and all connected to the same blue story. They wanted to do another one, and I was invited to go to Cardiff to the Writers' Summit, where we hashed out the ideas for a week, talked Doctor Who all day. I had the best time of my life. Got to tour the set, got to drive
Right.
a Dalek, and
Wow.
yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
So yeah, they wanted a representative from the game company to come and discuss this, as ours would be part of the plot. And if they could send only one person, again, my wonderful friend Aaron insisted that I be the one to go because I know the show best, and so on. If you're going to send two, then she would come, but it's just me. So yes, I had the time of life. It was a dream come true. We got to tour the TARDIS set. We got to go through the props warehouse and touch all the things. And yeah, it was fantastic. And I got to hang out with an amazing group of creative people for the week.
Right.
And the showrunner of this project, Gabby DeMatteis, was amazing. Best person to work with I could ever recommend. So yeah, after a week in Rothlock Studios in Cardiff, we went back and started to work on our ideas. And that project ended up uh, not coming to fruition because of the change in showrunners when Russell T
Mm.
Davies came back on board. He said, "No, we're doing this new idea. Here's what it is," and it was the uh, Doomsday Project. Each episode being 1 hour, like the 24 series, while she tries to prevent her own death, which she witnessed in episode 1, I believe.
Mm.
Anyway, so we were just handed out an assignment instead of working on. And I thought that working on it was great, but anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, I worked on the game through development, through the first time user interface, many iterations of that, many rewrites, and rights acquisitions, which was the most
Mhm.
complicated part of writing for Doctor Who. Um, because well, we have the rights to this character, but we don't have the rights to the image of the actor, or we
Right.
have the rights to this image of the actor, but we don't have the rights to the character, or we can use these monsters, but we can't use these ones. And this is part of the show's history,
Right.
because
Right.
they never expected it to last 60 years. They
Yeah.
thought originally it was going to be one or two at the most.
Yeah.
And so the BBC, in order to save money at the time, they underpaid their writers,
Yeah.
but with a stipulation in their contract that they would retain the rights to the
Ah.
characters and things that they created. And then years later came to regret this because
Right.
now all these people have to be consulted every time they want to do
Wow.
a Cyberman episode or a Dalek episode, or
Yeah.
the Ice Warriors or anything like that.
Yeah.
So while we were producing our game for the first 2 years, the BBC was in the process of reacquiring all of those rights that they had
Yeah.
frivolously given away all those years ago. Um, so yeah, but what characters we could use, what settings we could use, and so on were dicey topics, and I had to rewrite, like almost completely rewrite the first 15 episodes when
Wow.
suddenly it was realized, oh, we still don't have this character and we're not going to get it by our deadline. So we have to change all this. And
Yeah.
the exact same thing, although not as much of a rewrite, our main antagonist we couldn't get. Like in 2 years, we still didn't manage to acquire the rights to this character.
Yeah.
So we had to, change that. Now, mostly the main villain was an undercurrent, a thread.
Right.
So it wasn't like we had to rewrite every episode, but it was still just like, what now? Yeah.
Yeah, people don't know, do they? The fans don't know. Like, I find it interesting how many studios I've worked at that have a legal affairs department, and
Yes.
you just highlighted exactly why those corporate side lawyers have those gigs, because they have to write the contracts and make sure everything is cleared before something goes to production. Otherwise, they could have someone filing a claim against them. I was not consulted. I wasn't paid. I wasn't, and something like that with 6 decades of history. There could be potentially hundreds of those issues back in there,
Yeah.
to research and make sure everything's crossed their T's and dotted their I's. And it's, I think the entertainment business seems like it's almost sexy from the outside, but on the inside, there's a lot of pieces, a lot of things that
And
people
some
wouldn't
long
even.
hours sometimes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
But give you an example, two examples, opposite examples of the rights situation. For instance, we had the right to the character. Well, once we got Stephen Moffat signed in, about a few months into the project, then we had the rights to all of the characters he created, including the monsters, the Weeping Angels, very popular, so we had to get them. And the character of Amy Pond, but we didn't have the rights to the image of Karen Gillan, and she was really hard to get a hold of. She was one of the last people we got confirmed for, and we wanted to do some Amy and Rory stories. So for the longest time, we had Rory, but we didn't have
Right,
Amy.
right,
Um, they did eventually, but we had to weave her back in, and then the opposite one is we eventually got the rights to Nicholas Courtney, who is best known for playing Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart. But we didn't have the rights to the character of Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart
mhm,
because the writer's estate still hadn't given over. In 2 years, we still didn't manage to get that one. And so we could do Space Security Agent Brett Vion, who I'm sure no fan in the modern era has even seen a frame of,
right.
but he was in the Daleks Master Plan, a First Doctor serial way back in the mid '60s, and yeah, okay, but that's not really what we want, and
Right,
so
right.
yeah,
Yes.
but so the writing had to heel turn a number of times over the course of this, and it seemed like Kevin, the BBC licensing representative we were in constant contact, would always be saying, "I'm really sorry about this bad news, but yeah."
Wow.
But anyway, but otherwise, I mean, it was a joy to play with these characters and situations, and
Yeah.
some really creative stuff, all within
Yeah.
the limitations of the game itself. As a write
Mm.
limitations on the writing. For instance, in previous mobile games, like I had worked on the Archer Danger Phone game for the same
Mhm,
company,
mhm.
and there had been a little bit of animation and change of facial expressions for the cutscenes. Sorry,
Yeah.
to clarify, what I was writing mostly was the cutscenes that encourage the player to keep playing the game.
Sure. Yeah, I got it.
We're the
Yeah,
carrot.
it's those bits of story in between the game
Yeah,
activity, right? To just keep the narrative alive or the story arc happening. Am I correct?
exactly. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And to keep the player wanting to play the game to find out what happens. Now, in the Archer game, we had a little bit of animation, some changes of facial expressions, gestures, and stuff like that. But in the Doctor Who game, we had zero. So it
Wow.
was going to be static characters talking to other static characters.
Right.
Now, I figured, well, okay, as a classic series, especially fan, a story that is more dialogue heavy and character based would be fine. It's like the show is a low budget thing for many years, so yeah, we'll put the emphasis on that. And I'm a good dialogue guy, so yeah, I dove into that
Yep.
and tried to work out what we could depict without too much in the way of animations.
Hmm.
There was a bit with Joe Grant and a Cyberman at Unit HQ that I was trying to explain the visualization of this. Okay, I know the animations don't move, but we could layer the character on top of one another and it would look like this person is behind. And if we
Sure.
crop it just up here, we won't be able to see where their arms are. So if
Right.
there's, we had to work out a few details like that, but mostly it was just writing like a radio play,
Yeah. Yeah.
essentially.
Cool.
But that was great fun, and we did I did one episode of Doomsday for the new transmedia project, and my colleague Mario at their partners in Argentina got wrote the other one, and so now I'm in the Doctor Who wiki. I'm
Right.
thrilled, like I'm part of history. And I also had to add, because the needs of the game, I had to add certain things to fit the game structure. So I had to invent things which are now on that wiki in the universe. I invented Hinoch matter, which is sort of like stem cells of the universe. It can
Right.
turn into anything you want it to. Um, and the other was Kyphrid gems, which were we needed a currency in the game, and there wasn't really any currency in Doctor Who, so we had to invent
Yeah.
one. And players are familiar with gems as a valuable thing in gaming, so it seemed to work. And the
Right.
name Kyphrid is based on a Welsh word for cold cash.
Well, I'm just happy, Garner, that you didn't go with unobtainium. Really, that's
Unobtainium.
yeah. I don't,
No,
I don't know
no,
if you
and
remember,
I
watching
take my Who
Avatar.
fandom very seriously.
Oh, when that word came out on Avatar, I'm like, no. I was in the
Uh,
theater, like wanting to throw stuff at James Cameron. I'm like, you can't. That was a lazy line. That was could you called it anything? Emerald or I don't know, mineral number 36 would have been better than unobtainium to me. But I'm glad you
yeah.
didn't call it anything. So
MacGuffin deposits, and yeah,
right,
uh, whatever. Yeah, it's just
yeah.
that was just, oh really? That's just it. Just yeah, anything. I don't like anything that takes me out of the narrative. If
Oh,
I'm, if
absolutely, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, highly distracting in the middle of a movie to hear something like that. I just thought,
really,
wow.
that's what you
Yeah.
went with.
Yeah. You want to rewatch the movie and get over that. Rinse that out of your hair first and then go back and watch the rest of the story. And,
Yeah,
sad. But let's pivot for a sec. I appreciate your I mean, it sounds like a fun experience. They hired the right guy, clearly, because, they found a guy who is a Doctor Who specialist because you've, lived and breathed and, bathed in the Whoniverse for many, many years. So it, reminds me also of some of the stuff that Disney's doing with Star Wars and how they brought in some of these fan experts to help craft the new stories because they, like yourself, are sort of a sage of the old books and know the story arcs and the characters and things like that. So I think it's immensely relevant for a subject matter expert. I think of even on some of the shows I've worked on in the past where we would, to your point, go into the wikis and start studying and then
mm,
call some of the people that were kind of the keepers of the lore, so to speak, and say, hey, we're thinking this and this. Does this line up? Well, yes, but with the following three caveats, and then the other 25
yes,
distinctions.
yeah,
So if you really want to be true to the canon of any show, you really do have to invest and find the right writers and the people that are, even if they're not a writer, they've read and lived this, franchise for a long, long time, right?
yeah. To write it, to enjoy it. I have to say, a lot of people ask, I don't know where to start with Doctor Who,
Right.
and my
Yes.
answer is usually you can start almost anywhere. That's the
Yeah.
beauty of it.
I but don't you think, like, for me it would be Pertwee or Baker? I think I would go
Yeah.
back and start somewhere there.
I would definitely heartily recommend watching the entire 1970s of
Yeah,
Doctor Who, from Pertwee's debut to towards the end of the Baker era. It's just gold.
yeah,
And there's some amazing stories in there. Um,
absolutely. Yeah,
that would be the best thing to do for the classic era.
yeah,
Um, but it really, the beauty of the format is that you can come in almost any time. Anytime there's a new companion or a new doctor, the
sure.
new companion is there to have things explained to them. The new doctor
Right.
is the new doctor. It's a new personality. It's a new take, and
Yeah,
you're discovering them at the same time as they're discovering you.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it does lend itself. So if you're gonna start, you could start now, say with the new Shuti Gatwa
yeah.
Doctor and the stuff they're doing in Disney.
Mm,
And
mm.
clearly they've got a lot more money now.
Yes. Well, it's a different era, right? You know, when we
Yeah.
were kids, comic books were not Marvel movies yet, and
No,
it
no.
was seen as this counterculture, a subculture of nerdy kids reading
Yeah.
fantasy stories about superheroes, but it hadn't. You know, nowadays it's a completely multi-billion-dollar industry, but at the
Mm.
time it was significantly smaller.
We were
And
fringe. We felt very fringe.
absolutely, yeah. And that fringe group of people got older, and somebody had the brilliant idea to make a movie out of, you know, and also the technology caught up in filmmaking, right? We didn't
Yeah.
have CGI when we were children. And so the concept of anything that would have all these fantastical characters breathing fire and flying around and all the other sort of special effects would have been unbelievable or unproducible because the tech at the time, you know, didn't, you know, we think of stop motion and things on wire. And, you know, I think of the early
Did
Star
you ever
Wars
watch
movies.
yeah, speaking of which, did you ever watch the Spider-Man TV show in the 70s?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Grew up
So
on that.
the
Yeah.
the live action one, I'm saying, with the extremely slow crawling up, and the
Yeah.
it was just, yeah, it was like, okay, it's sort of Spider-Man, yeah, okay. But
Yep.
yeah, but it wasn't quite until we got the real, yeah, the movies really,
Oh,
really hit.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
21st century, 21st century Spider-Man was way cooler.
Yeah. Well, and again, like, you know, I think of, I don't know if you remember Bakshi's early kind of rotoscoped Lord of the Rings thing that was
Yes, yes, I
right,
saw that
right.
in.
Way back in the, I don't know, late 70s, maybe early 80s. I can't remember, but it's somewhere back there. And I remember watching it, and I was a big fan of Tolkien, and I just thought, this doesn't do the writing any justice. Like, if anything, it's just terrible, right? So,
Yeah,
you know, we were all waiting for, and then clearly in the like sort of mid 80s and early 90s, game changers started to come out, right? I think of like
yeah.
Blade Runner, which was, I could be wrong here, but I think 80 something, 82 or 3 or 4, somewhere in that
I think
zone.
it was 82,
Yeah. And, you know, and then even the Star Wars movies start to go from physical effects to digital effects. And, you know, they start upresing some of the old stuff and fixing, you know, giving director's cuts now with more CG. And yeah, things change a lot, right? Like,
yeah.
and I sort of wonder if anyone grew up, you know, the generation or two after us, they don't know what we endured. Darn it. You know, they don't know what we had to put up with until our stuff was, you know, viable as a you know, as
Well,
an enterprise.
we had to use our imagination to fill in the blanks.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
like, well, I know they can't really show it, but in my mind, it's the real thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
When Gardner,
it looked
when you
real
were,
enough at the time.
sorry, I cut you off. What did you say there? Sorry.
I thought it looked real enough at the time.
Yes.
And a lot of those mechanical effects, practical effects now still, a lot of them still hold up. It depends on the quality of
Yeah.
production, but
Well, I
there's
don't
some
know.
that look
When
cheap and
you,
always look cheap, but
yeah, when you were a kid, did you watch the Harryhausen stuff? You know, the Greek fables and
yeah, yeah,
legends, and
Clash
yeah,
of the
right.
Titans, that sort of thing. Yeah,
Yeah. So when
yeah.
I was a kid, that was like as good as it could get, right? There were these
Mhm.
mythological creatures and all done in stop mo. But when you're like, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, I was like, this is awesome, right? Because your imagination is so fertile, and it
Yeah.
was doing a great job. But yeah, things have changed significantly. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
wanted to just point out a couple things. You did a short film and have done some other writing. Do you want to talk about that for a minute or two?
Yeah, well, this short film, there's a screen capture behind me, although your listeners won't hear that. Is The Time Is Right. It's a basically a proof of concept for a potential series. I've written the pilot for it, and this short film is sort of a condensed version of that pilot, just to give a
Yeah.
sense of what it would be like. Because there's, you know, and this is a futuristic time travel show. It's a game show where contestants come on and try and fix something that went wrong in their previous lives and try and
Oh,
save a loved one. Um, so it's like the excesses of reality television with science fiction and wish fulfillment. Oh gee, I wish I only could go back and change that one thing that went wrong with my life, or save my friend from that car accident or whatever. And this started way back in 2000 when mutual friend's wife died in a car accident on her way
wow.
home from grocery shopping on Super Bowl Sunday,
Wow.
and we all went over to help his her widower
Yeah.
grieve, and that stuck with me for many years. And then I mulled over this for a bit, and then I was uh, hashing out ideas for next scripts to write, and I sent a bunch of them to my friend Aaron. Same Aaron, we've been friends since live journal days.
Right.
That's how long. And she said, "Well, I really like this Time Is Right idea. Why don't
Yeah.
you do that?" Only, and I said, "Should it be a movie or a TV show?" And he said, "Oh, I think it should be a TV show, if only because I want to write in it someday."
Right. Right.
So I went to work, and then I wrote the first draft of the pilot I wrote in 22 hours, not
Wow.
continuously, but over a weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I write fast. It's my ADHD superpower by hyper-focus. But yeah, once it was clear in my mind, and once I got the go ahead, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing a TV pilot, go. And then
Yeah.
yeah, and then it came out in record time.
Right.
Um, and many revisions later and stuff like that. I remember one note I got was that it was too subtle.
Oh.
That I guess I get what you're doing here, but the audience might not pick it up. So you need to dumb it down a little for the producers who might be, the studio executives who might be,
Yeah.
what's going on here exactly? Why are things changing? What's this about
Wow.
the water bottle? I don't get it. Um, but yeah, so yeah, a few revisions later. Then in was it 2010, I think, that I got it read at a Lift Out Loud event,
Hmm.
and got some feedback from the audience, and they did a dramatic reading of it on stage. So I got to hear the words come back to me
Cool.
with actors and performers. And that was invaluable because although most people were filmmakers or screenwriters or interested parties, were very harsh and critical on it, and I felt never felt on the spot in my life so much as
Yeah.
that moment. But the really interesting, the really thoughtful, and really enthusiastic, positive responses were from the sci-fi fans and the on the audience.
Hmm. Hmm.
They were
Very good.
asking the most intelligent questions. They were asking, okay, so why is this the way this is? And what happens if someone were to do this? And they were like, just, they were really into the concept and really into, and that told me I had reached my audience.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
The
Yes.
people that
That's
I want
fantastic.
to write to, the people that I wanted to reach, they got it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that kept me going. And
No, it's cool.
we tried to crowdfund in 2015. That didn't quite work. And then eventually I had to dip into my savings and produce the short myself,
Yeah.
which we shot just before the pandemic. It was November of 2019.
Hmm.
And then a couple of years in post. And then in last, no, it was 2022, just for my birthday, my 50th birthday, it was completed, and we had a little mini screening party at the Little Prince Micro Theater and Lounge. It is in the Guinness Book of World Records for the world's smallest purpose-built movie theater.
Oh,
So we rented it out for the night and invited the cast and a few of the actors, including Sebastian Spence, who is behind me here. And others came to celebrate the release of the film and watch in its finished form. And since then, it's been making the rounds on festivals.
excellent. Great. Well, look, thank you, Garner. I'd like to wrap today, and hopefully, you know, down the road somewhere, come back and chat again about some of the other work, and maybe even some of the other fan bases, or you know, I know you're a Doctor Who fan, but I know you're a fan of a lot of other sci-fi writing too. So we might be able to come back another time and chat about that. But I thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lance.
All right, talk to you soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Think about it.